Florida real estate has hit a standstill, whether it's because of migration cooling, interest rates rising, or inventory rising. There are a ton of issues that face the Florida real estate market in today's world, and my goal is to go over all of those things with you here today. So what we're going to do in today's video is take a look at some of the major factors that are against the Florida real estate market. We're going to be talking about migration cooling here in the state of Florida. We're also going to be talking about insurance and the rise of insurance here in the state of Florida. We're also going to talk about affordability in terms of interest rates and pricing. We're going to take a look at inventory and how that could affect your decision moving forward, and also tying in with that new construction and the oversupply of new construction and why that may be a benefit for you. And at the end of the video, we're going to pull all these factors together and put together the best case study that I could say of why it might be a good idea to buy a home right now in the state of Florida. So I want to start off with the biggest factor that I think is affecting Florida real estate, and that is going to be the migration that we're not seeing anymore compared to what we saw in previous years. Even prior to the pandemic, rates were higher than what they are today. So Florida is facing a major problem because at the end of the day, we have a lot of people that move to the state of Florida, say they're going to move to the state of Florida, but over the past couple years, we've seen that fall off a cliff. And it's no secret that the pandemic really fueled a lot of the reasons that people moved to the state of Florida, whether it was just how the state of Florida handled the pandemic, the government in the state of Florida, or just wanting a completely different lifestyle than what they were experiencing and realizing that, like, hey, life is short. And the pandemic put that in perspective for a ton of people. So if we take a look at the peak pandemic year, we're looking at 2022, we could see that 314,000 people migrated to the state of Florida. And if we take a look at 2024, we don't have the 2025 data just yet, you can see that only 64,000 people migrated to the great state of Florida. That is a huge drop off over a couple of years that really shows some big problems because, as we're going to talk about later in the video, new construction has been building like crazy here in the state of Florida, and now we have an oversupply of houses here that are built brand new. But I think this even looks a little bit worse when you factor in pre-pandemic, when this was more of a normal world, right? So if we go back to 2019, we can actually see that the numbers are still pretty bad. So if we take a look at the 2019 numbers, we can see that 134,000 people moved to the state of Florida. And when you compare it to today's numbers, it's almost double what we saw in 2024. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is, will we see the same migration data fall in 2025? If it stabilizes, then we probably don't have an issue. But if it continues to fall, like it has since 2022, it's really halved itself every single year. 2022 is 314,000, 2023 was like 130,000, and then 2024 was 64,000. So if 2025 is 32,000, then we could have a bigger problem for many homeowners here in the state of Florida looking to buy and sell than we have today. And this leads me to my next point, which is going to be talking about insurance and covering the entire problems about insurance in the state of Florida, if you want to check that out in the video above. But in a nutshell, we've seen some big problems in the state of Florida when it comes down to homeowners insurance, with premiums rising 30–60% over the past couple years, and also people just not being able to get insurance and insurers moving out of the state of Florida. This obviously causes a lot of hesitancy around living in Florida because you're worried not only about insurance and the cost of it, but you're also worried about, why is it going up, and am I going to be able to insure my property, especially when we have Category 3, Category 4 hurricanes coming by every single year. This is a big problem that Florida is always going to face. The average insurance premium at the end of 2023 was $3,600, which is 34% higher than 2022. And in 2025, what I know is that the average insurance premium for the entire state of Florida is somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 a year. And that's obviously a large difference compared to what it was prior to the pandemic and even 2022. So if someone's moving to Florida and they're thinking about their cost of living, they have this wild card of insurance where they're like, hey, this could keep going up and I have no control over it. And that's the truth of it, right? But one of the good things is that there has been some legislation that has gone on that has actually made insurers come back to the state of Florida and has actually taken off and has relieved a good bit of the policies from Citizens Property Insurance, which is backed by the state of Florida. So if you can't get insurance, you always have Citizens Property Group. But the problem with that is that their policies and how many policies they serviced increased dramatically when all these insurers left, because they were the only shop in town that could insure you. In 2023, Citizens Property Insurance had roughly 1.4 million policies here in the state of Florida. And in today's world, they're actually operating around 770,000 insurance policies here in the state of Florida, which is a good sign that they're actually offloading policies to other companies and other private companies aside from the one that's backed by the state of Florida. So the main point here is that the market in terms of the insurance market is stabilizing, but it is more expensive than it was, and it is more expensive than the average across the national United States, where insurance costs are normally around $2,000 to $2,500. The other good news is if you are looking to move and you're wanting to move to Florida and not worry about hurricanes and insurance too much, you can check out northeastern Florida in St. Augustine, because on average our insurance policies are somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 for the entire year. So we're more like the rest of the nation than what the rest of the state of Florida is, and every area is going to be different, and that's something really important to know. You look in South Florida, your insurance is more than likely going to be more expensive than what you'll see here in North Florida. And that's because we just get hit with less hurricanes. And this leads us to our third point, which is going to be rates and affordability. Now, it's no secret that Florida's prices have gone up drastically. It used to be the cheap place that you go and you buy a nice piece of land, and it's way cheaper than whenever you're moving from. And typically those people are moving from California, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. When they come down here, they're like, man, you get all this for that? And in some areas, it still is that way, where we are more affordable than the Northeast or California, especially in many locations in those areas. But in general, the price of housing across the entire state of Florida has gone up by 60% over the past 5 years, which is drastic, especially for many of the locals living here that don't make the same money as the people living in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and California. And not only did pricing go up dramatically, but interest rates went up dramatically in 2022, which caused our market to slow drastically overnight. It seemed like within a couple of months, it went from on fire to cooled immediately. And many real estate professionals, myself included, believe that real estate in general across the nation, but especially here in Florida, has been in somewhat of a recession. Even though we haven't seen pricing go down, we've seen closings drop off dramatically. So you have prices increasing, you have rates increasing, you have insurance increasing, and you also have net migration slowing to the state of Florida, which is going to lead to an overall cooling housing market. And because the housing market has cooled, that leads us to our next point, which means that our inventory, how many homes we have for sale on the market, has also risen pretty dramatically over the past couple years. Now, the one thing to note with that is in 2021, across the nation, the real estate market was on fire, and we saw about 6.1 million home sales in 2021. That's probably one of the highest it's ever been in history. So you should expect the pendulum to swing back to another level where, like, hey, we're not having as many closings. And that is evidence over the past couple years. If you take a look at closings, 2024 was one of the lowest rates of the amount of closings across the United States for 30 years. So what I want to do is give you the full picture and really put things into perspective, right? If you look at things since 2020, yeah, our inventory has increased dramatically. But if we go back to 2015 to 2019, you'll see a different picture, and your perspective will totally change on this. If you take a look at 2015, you can see that we have around 90,000 homes active on the market in the state of Florida. Today, we have about 110,000 homes active on the market in the state of Florida. So when we look at inventory and we see all these news stories about inventory rising 28%, 100%, whatever it is in the mainstream media, we also need to factor in that we're talking about from pandemic lows where we've never seen the housing market like that before, and that was a time in history we probably won't see again. In February of 2022, we had 26,000 homes available. So if you look at the increase, we have 110,000 homes available now. Yeah, when you look at those couple of years, that's a dramatic increase, and that should make you a little bit worried. But when we reverse a couple years, we look at 2019, 2018, we see that it's going to be more normal. In February of 2019, we had 100,000 homes on the market. So in reality, yeah, the market's inventory has increased, but it's back to more of a normal level. It's definitely higher than it was previously, but there's a whole bunch of other factors that come into that because our population has grown dramatically, and also builders built dramatically in that time, which leads us to our next point. New construction. New construction remains one of the best deals here in St. Johns County. I can't speak for the entire state of Florida, but here in St. Johns County, it's priced just about the same as resales, but you also get a ton of incentives. And apparently across the entire nation, about 66% of all builders are offering some type of incentive, and that's all market specific, but I guarantee a lot of them are going to be in Texas and Florida because we've had the biggest issues with the housing market since things have kind of swung back to more of what a normal market is. So we've actually seen housing starts and new permits being pulled in the state of Florida slow down a good bit, which may be a good thing, maybe not be a good thing, depending on what happens here with interest rates in the next couple months. But at the end of the day, it's changed, right? And builders built a ton of inventory over these past couple years in order to supply the demand that was coming in. But the demand and the supply are now out of balance. The people coming into Florida, like we've covered, and for all the other factors that we covered here today, has slowed down dramatically. So now builders are left with inventory on their hands that they're paying money for every single month, and their holding costs. That's actually one of the good things for you as a buyer in this market, is that, hey, this builder's offering a 4.3% interest rate and they're gonna pay $22,000 in closing costs. Oh, great. Well, that's money I keep in my pocket, and that's money I keep on the monthly and also throughout a 30-year fixed interest rate. That's an amazing incentive to have in today's market, especially you get a brand new house. And I can speak on that here in St. Johns County a lot better than I can for the rest of Florida, but I know our market here in northeastern Florida is doing much better than South Florida and many other areas of Florida, just because we don't have the same issues when it comes down to insurance, right? We still have people moving here, and we also have relative affordability compared to the rest of Florida. So pretty much every new construction deal I've had, they're given full closing costs, which typically are about 3.5% of your purchase price. So if you're buying a $500,000 home, it could be somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for your closing costs. And they're buying down your interest rates. And right now, interest rates are around 6.3%. A lot of them are buying them down to 4.99, 4.5%, 5.5%, just depending on your financing options. And that's a huge deal when we're talking about monthly payment and interest over the life of the loan. Okay, so we've talked about migration slowing down. We've talked about insurance costs rising, affordability and interest rates rising. We've also talked about inventory rising, and we've talked about new construction. All of these are the major factors that are kind of slowing down our real estate market here. But what I want to do is take a look at a couple key points that I think could change everything. And the first thing I want to talk about is inventory. Let's take a look at Florida's inventory. So for the first time since May of 2022, we've actually seen inventory start to decrease ahead of our seasonal trends. Typically every single year we see, summer being the peak of active inventory, and then towards the end of the year it starts to tailor off. But since 2022, May, June, July, we've seen pretty much straight increases year over year in active inventory. But this year seems to be a little bit different. We see May really cresting the peak of active inventory, and June, July, August all starting to go downhill. And that's one thing that may be an indicator of like, hey, our market might start to be turning around here. And that's not just a variety of factors that are tailored to interest rates and insurance, but also pent-up demand of people who wanted to buy, who moved here in 2022, 2023, 2024, but were like, you know what? The market's got me kind of feeling a little uneasy. I'm gonna wait and see what happens. And for a lot of people, that can only be so long. On top of that, there's been other macroeconomic factors that have pushed interest rates down pretty sharply over these last 2 months, let's say. And that's going to be the jobs report and the inflation data. And that also correlates with what the Fed's decision is going to be for them raising or lowering the federal funds rate, which indirectly does not exactly causation, but there is correlation between the federal funds rate and 30-year mortgages. So if you haven't heard, the jobs numbers over the past year have actually been revised by almost 1 million jobs. I think it's 991,000 jobs that they said we had, and all of a sudden we didn't have. So that's caused a huge shock to the market, which then made interest rates plunge pretty much off a cliff, which, this is relative, right? When you're going from 6.5 to 6.3, that is a huge change week over week, and we've been seeing that happening. Aside from that, inflation hasn't picked up like the Fed thought it would, and that's why the Fed has paused on lowering rates or doing anything with the federal funds rate, because they wanted to see what happened with inflation and what happened with Donald Trump's tariffs, and how those tariffs were going to affect inflation. As of right now, there really hasn't been any notable differences in inflation because of the tariffs. And that's something that the Fed has wanted to wait and see. And that's been their whole game plan. Let's wait and see what happens. But the biggest thing with that is that the Fed saw positive job numbers, right? Over the past year, you saw that our market was still going, the economy was still adding jobs, but all of a sudden in the past couple weeks, we found that a lot of those jobs were not real, right? So 991,000 jobs revised downward over the past year. This isn't a political thing. Half of the year was Donald Trump, half the year was Joe Biden. So you got Republican and Democrat on both sides of this field, and all the numbers were wrong for the past year. So that has now put the Fed in a position where they're like, hey, okay, inflation's kind of staying where it is. We kind of feel maybe we have that under control. We've been waiting and seeing to see what happens on this for a long time. But on top of that, the jobs numbers are not great, right? So the economy is stalling out, which is not what the Fed wants to do, which then makes them want to lower interest rates, which is happening next week. But many people believe because of the negative job reports that we've seen, it could be a 0.5 basis point drop. So we'll see a 0.5% drop in the federal funds rate. That remains to be seen, but what I do think is that the market is pricing that in. So what we saw what happened with interest rates dropping so dramatically, they think that that's going to happen, right? Mortgage interest rates are around 6.3%. It sparked more people coming into the market. Technically, we are higher than this time last year, but we've seen about a 23% increase year over year in mortgage applications because of that drop in interest rate. So to put a bow on this, why is right now a good time to buy a home? Well, like I said, we have a lot more inventory, right? So if you were looking at a home in 2021, 2022, 2023, you really didn't have that many options available to you. And if you did, you had to compete with other buyers for them. 2024, 2025 hasn't been like that. You have more options and you also have more leverage in the negotiation where you can ask for more things. In 2021, 2022, it was pretty much like, hey, if you don't want this house, this person will buy this house. Oh, and they'll pay $20,000 more. That's not the market anymore. If anything, it's the opposite way, where if you as a buyer, you can come in, you can say, hey, I can go to new construction, they'll buy my interest rate down, they'll buy my closing costs down, or you can buy a resale home, which is in reality competing with new construction, and you can negotiate a great deal with them as well. Then the next thing we need to talk about is seasonality of the market. Every single market has a historical pattern of when the peak of pricing is and when the bottom of pricing is every single year. It's not just a constant straight line. It fluctuates year over year and month over month. And the important thing to know here in St. Johns County is that May, June, July is typically the peak of our market in terms of pricing. And that's driven primarily by people trying to relocate before the school year starts, right? And then once we get into September, October, that's really the bottom of the market for the entire year. And then November, December, we get a little bit of a pop when we got the snowbirds coming down, getting out of the cold. So if you're looking for the home that you want to get an interest rate that's beneficial to you before, if interest rates continue to go down further, no one knows if they will or not, but if the Fed does decide to cut rates more drastically over these next couple months, which is very possible considering the jobs report and inflation, interest rates could also follow that as well. So that could cause more demand in the market. So not only do you get your pick of homes with the higher than normal inventory, but you also get a friendlier interest rate than we've seen over the past couple of years and potentially beat the rush of people coming to the market when interest rates potentially do go down any further. And that's obviously not a given, but it's potential with the Fed probably going to lower rates as we see worse and worse job numbers because they were trying to do a soft landing, but who knows if they actually achieved it. And then on top of that, you have seasonality. So September, October is typically the best time of the year to buy a home in terms of pricing. So all those factors could work for you if you're looking to buy a home in the state of Florida today. And guys, if you have any questions about what we covered here today, make sure you reach out to me directly. We have all my contact information here in the description below and the comments below as well. Reach out to me, schedule a call if you'd like with the Calendly link in the description. I'm here to help if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in Northeastern Florida, or if you're looking at any other part of Florida, I can find you a great agent. Until next time, guys.